James Brown didn't plan to adopt a son that day. He was just driving through Augusta, Georgia, in August 1965, on his way to a business meeting. He was 32 years old at the peak of his career, had a wife at home, a busy schedule, a million things on his mind. Then he saw a teenage boy sleeping in a doorway. Something made James stop the car. Maybe it was the way the boy was curled up, trying to make himself small. Maybe it was the thinness of his arms. Maybe it was the fact that James had been that boy once. James walked over. "Hey son, you okay?" The boy, his name was Terry Mills, 13 years old, looked up with the kind of eyes that had seen too much too young. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine. When's the last time you ate?" Terry didn't answer. James made a decision in about 5 seconds that most people spend months thinking about. "Come home with me." Terry looked confused. "What?" "I said come home with me. I'll feed you, give you a place to sleep. We'll figure the rest out later." Terry didn't move. Probably thought it was a trick, some kind of trap. "I'm not going to hurt you," James said. "I'm James Brown, and I was you once, and nobody helped me. But I'm going to help you." What James thought would be one night turned into a week turned into a month turned into years, and Terry Mills, the homeless kid from the doorway, became James Brown's son. August 15th, 1965. James Brown was driving through the Terry Road neighborhood in Augusta, the same neighborhood where he'd grown up poor. He'd just finished a recording session and was heading to meet with his accountant about some business deals. James didn't usually drive through this area anymore. It reminded him of things he'd rather forget: the poverty, the hunger, the shame of having nothing while everyone else seemed to have something. But that day he'd taken a different route. And that's when he saw the boy. The kid was maybe 13, 14 years old, sleeping in the doorway of what used to be a grocery store, but was now just an abandoned building with boarded-up windows. The boy had positioned himself in the corner of the doorway, knees pulled up to his chest, head down, trying to be invisible. James pulled over without really thinking about why. He got out of his car, a nice car, a Cadillac, the kind of car that announced you'd made it, and walked over to the doorway. The boy heard him coming and woke up immediately. That fight-or-flight response that street kids develop. His eyes were wide, scared, calculating whether to run. "Easy, son," James said, holding up his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. Just wanted to see if you're all right." The boy didn't say anything, just watched James like a cornered animal. "What's your name?" James asked. "Terry." "Terry what?" "Just Terry." "You got family around here?" Terry shook his head. "Where are your parents?" "Gone." James recognized the tone. Not gone like they'd died, gone like they'd left. Chosen to leave, abandoned him. "How long you been on the streets?" Terry shrugged. "Few months, maybe a year, I don't know." James looked at this kid, really looked at him. The dirty clothes that were too big, the shoes that were falling apart, the thinness that came from not eating regularly, the way he held himself, defensive, ready for the world to hurt him because it always did. And James saw himself, not the James Brown who was performing for thousands of people and making hit records, but the James Brown who'd been 13 years old with nowhere to go and nobody to care. "When's the last time you ate?" James asked. "Yesterday, I think." "You hungry?" Terry didn't answer, but his eyes said yes. "Come on," James said. "I'll buy you some food." Terry hesitated. "Why?" "Because you're hungry, and I can help. That's enough." They walked to a diner 2 blocks away. James could feel people staring. This well-dressed black man, with what was obviously a homeless kid. Let them stare. James ordered Terry breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, grits, orange juice, the works. Terry ate like someone who didn't know when the next meal would come, barely chewing, hands shaking slightly. James remembered eating like that. The desperation of hunger mixed with the fear that someone would take the food away. While Terry ate, James asked questions, not pushy, just trying to understand. Terry's story came out in pieces. His mother had left when he was 9, just walked out one day and never came back. His father had stuck around for another year, but he was a drunk who couldn't hold a job. Eventually he left too. Terry had bounced between distant relatives who didn't want him and shelters that were full, finally ended up on the streets because at least there nobody pretended to care. James listened and felt something tight in his chest. This was his story. Different details but the same core truth. A kid nobody wanted. A kid the world had decided wasn't worth the trouble. When Terry finished eating, James asked, "Where you going now?" Terry shrugged. "Back to the doorway, I guess." James made a decision. It wasn't logical. It wasn't planned. It was just something he knew he had to do. "Come home with me." Terry looked up, confused. "What?" "I said come home with me. I'll give you a place to sleep. We'll figure out the rest later." "Why would you do that?" "Because when I was your age, I was sleeping in doorways too, and nobody helped me. Nobody took me in. I had to survive on my own, and it almost killed me." James leaned forward. "But I made it, and now I'm in a position to help someone else, so I'm going to help you." Terry looked skeptical. "For how long?" "For as long as you need it." "What do you want from me?" James understood the question. Street kids learned quick that nothing was free. Everyone wanted something. "Nothing," James said. "I don't want anything except to know you've got food and a bed and a chance to figure out what comes next." Terry stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. James took Terry to his house on Walton Way, the same house he'd bought for his mother, though she'd since moved to a different place. It was a nice house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a yard, the kind of place Terry had probably never even been inside before. When they walked in, James's wife Deidre was in the kitchen. She turned around and saw Terry. Her face went from surprised to confused to concerned in about 3 seconds. "James, who is this?" "This is Terry. He's going to stay with us for a while." "Stay? Baby, can I talk to you in the bedroom for a minute?" James followed Deidre into the bedroom. She closed the door. "What are you doing?" she asked, keeping her voice low but intense. "I found him sleeping in a doorway. He's homeless. He needs help." "James, we can't just bring home a random child. We don't know anything about him." "I know he's 13 and alone and has nowhere else to go. We have our own problems. Your career is demanding. We're barely—" She stopped herself. "This is a lot to take on." James was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Dee, when I was his age, I was sleeping in doorways, stealing food to survive. Nobody helped me, and I spent years hating the world for that, for not caring. But now I have a chance to be different, to be the person I needed when I was Terry's age." Deidre looked at him, really looked at him, and she saw something she didn't often see in James. Vulnerability. Raw, honest vulnerability. "Okay," she finally said, "but this is your responsibility. You're taking care of him." "I will." That first night, James showed Terry to the guest bedroom. Terry stood in the doorway, not moving. "Something wrong?" James asked. "This whole room is for me?" "Yeah, just me? Nobody else sleeping in here?" James realized Terry probably hadn't had his own space in years, maybe ever. "Just you, son. This is your room." Terry walked in slowly, like he was afraid it might disappear. He sat on the edge of the bed and just stared at the floor. "You okay?" James asked. "Why are you doing this?" Terry's voice was barely a whisper. "You don't know me. I could be anybody. I could steal from you. I could—" "Terry." James sat down next to him. "I'm doing this because I know what it's like to be you. And I know what it does to a kid when nobody cares, when the whole world treats you like you don't matter. I'm not going to let that happen to you." Terry was crying now, silently, tears just running down his face. "You can stay as long as you need to," James continued. "No strings, no conditions. You just stay, and we'll figure out the rest as we go." What James thought would be a few days turned into a week. Terry was quiet, careful, like he expected to be kicked out any moment. But James kept making it clear, You're not going anywhere unless you want to go." A week turned into 2 weeks, then a month. Terry started to relax, started to believe maybe this was real. Maybe this man actually meant what he said. James enrolled Terry in school, bought him new clothes, made sure he had food, shelter, everything he needed. But more than that, James gave Terry something nobody else had: attention, time, care. After about 3 months, James called a lawyer. "I want to become Terry's legal guardian." The lawyer pulled out paperwork. "Mr. Brown, do you understand what this means? Legal guardianship is a serious commitment. You're taking responsibility for this child's welfare, education, future. It's not temporary." "I understand," James said. "And you're sure? You've only known him a few months." James thought about the last 3 months, watching Terry slowly come out of his shell, seeing him smile for the first time, hearing him laugh, watching him actually act like a kid instead of a survivor. "I'm sure." James signed the papers. Terry Mills officially became James Brown's ward, not just a guest, not just charity, family. Over the years, Terry became part of James's life in every way. James took him on tour, taught him about music, about business, about being a man. Terry went from a homeless kid with no future to a young man with possibilities. James never made a big public deal about it, never used it for publicity. This wasn't about being seen as a hero. This was personal. This was about seeing a kid who needed help and actually helping instead of just walking by. Terry eventually went to college, got a job in the music industry, built a life, and he never forgot what James had done for him. Years later, someone asked Terry what it was like being taken in by James Brown. "James saved my life," Terry said. "Not in some dramatic movie way, in the real way. I was headed for prison or death. That's where kids like me end up. But James saw me, actually saw me, and he didn't just give me money or a place to stay for a night. He gave me a chance, a real chance. He became my father in every way that mattered." In 2006, when James was dying, Terry was at his bedside. James was weak, barely conscious. But when he saw Terry, he smiled. "You made it, kid," James whispered. "Because of you," Terry said, holding James's hand. "I was nobody when you found me, just another throwaway kid, and you made me somebody. You gave me a life." James squeezed Terry's hand. "You were always somebody. I just made sure you knew it." Those were some of the last words James Brown spoke before he died, and Terry carried them with him for the rest of his life. The story of James Brown and Terry Mills isn't just about a rich man helping a poor kid. It's about recognizing yourself in someone else's pain. It's about making a split-second decision to care when it would be easier to look away. It's about understanding that sometimes the most important thing you can do is not make a hit record or perform for thousands of people, but see one person who needs help and actually help them. James Brown didn't just give Terry Mills money or a temporary place to stay. He gave him what James himself had never gotten at 13, someone who cared, someone who said you matter, and meant it, someone who showed up not just for a day or a week, but for years, for a lifetime. If this story of seeing yourself in someone else's pain, making room in your life for someone who needs it, and understanding that family isn't just blood, it's choice, moved you, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that one person can change a life by simply deciding to care. Have you ever helped someone when you didn't have to? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more incredible stories about the moments when legends proved that success means nothing if you don't use it to lift others up.